and we are now joined by the Railway Minister, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. Mr. Prabhu, thank you very much for joining us. Today is a very big day for us, also because a very big investor and an India watcher from JP Morgan, Adrian Mowat, is with us. Without wasting any time, Adrian, your question first.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you very much for being on this interview. The first question I'd have is to do with the relative market share between rail freight versus trucks. We've seen, obviously, the price of diesel coming down with the decline in the oil price, yet the freight costs have gone up. And so, you know, from people like the Container Corporation of India, we hear that market share is going down for rail freight. Is there anything that can be done to change this trend?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you properly. I'm sorry, the connection is not so good. Could I know it again? Sorry, please.
It was a question about trying to get an increase in market share for rail freight. We've seen an increase in rail freight charges at the same time as diesel prices have been falling, and so you've had a relative move in competitive advantage towards using road over rail. Would it be considered a reduction in rail freight costs in order for it to remain competitive with trucking?
You know, of course, in a way, all markets are integrated, and in a way, if you have intrinsic strengths like the Indian market has, of many institutions, many important players, the critical mass, the domestic demand, I think we, in a way, are also insulated. So we get affected adversely, but because of an intrinsic strength, we could also ride this difficult phase in a much better manner than many other countries. So what we are doing currently is to ensure that we are increasing our domestic capabilities to face such challenges that come from global headwinds. At the same time, we make sure that we also respond to some of these global challenges. You know, when what happens in the markets, currency markets or capital markets, anywhere in the world gets, India obviously will get affected because also we are integrated. So the strategy has to be twofold: to work on domestic strengths to be enhanced as much as possible in a shortest possible time. We have certain legacy issues which we try to keep them behind, trying to address them. Our Honorable Prime Minister personally monitors untangling of some of the stuck assets that happened as a result of past policies. But again, our Finance Minister, if you could have seen in the budget, has laid down a very clear signal. Yesterday, our central bank has also responded positively, putting faith in Indian economy in a very significant way. And as you know, that our central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, is completely independent, autonomous. They function in their own wisdom, and they also have reposed faith in the growth trajectory that India is projecting, and therefore we feel that we'll be able to ride the wave in a much positive way than many other countries. Our job is, of course, we want to make sure that the global economy also gets benefit of this, because if any economy of a size of India expands little more than the rest, obviously the benefit will accrue to other economies also. Like we see that the Chinese is the second largest, Japan is the third largest, two large economies in Asia, we are the third. So we have a great responsibility also to make sure that we also contribute in our own way to some recoveries in the rest of the world economy. So of course we are not as big as the largest economy like US, China, Japan, but still we feel we'll also contribute. So we have tried to weather the storm globally in terms of making sure that we work in a proper manner. We are seeing a lot of interest within the country. Now investments are picking up. We are also seeing a lot of global interest in India, thanks to realization of the intrinsic strength of the Indian economy, but also because of the leadership of a Prime Minister who inspires the global community of investors to ensure that they will come here, they see a regime which is very positively responding, which is business friendly, but also does not necessarily favor a particular entity. So it's no crony capitalism, it is true working of a market forces, institutionalized by government policies, by making sure that each of the ministry also contributes.
Minister, can I ask you specifically to talk about what railway projects will be announced over the next 12 months? I mean, I understand the ministry has been doing a huge amount of homework in developing credible projects in the railway sector, particularly in urban transportation. where I think people are probably underestimating how important that's going to be in terms of its multiplier effect on growth. Could you maybe run us through some of the metro schemes that the Railway Ministry will be promoting?
You know, there are huge opportunities in transportation sector of India. And because the urbanization is rising, as you correctly mentioned, even the urban transportation itself. So there is a great opportunity because people will move. What is urbanization? When they come to urban areas, obviously you need to provide urban transport solutions. But where do they come into urban areas? So they come from hinterland. So you also need a connectivity from hinterland to the cities. So actually speaking, we need a holistic management of integrated transport solutions, which we are working on. I already announced in my budget, which I presented 6 weeks ago to the Parliament, that we'll actually be putting into place a national plan for railway network expansion, which will encompass all the concerns of all the stakeholders in the country, including private sector, state governments and others, so that it will be a holistic plan available for implementation. Now in terms of projects, in fact in the city of Mumbai, we already talk about elevated corridor. We know there are about more than 8 million people travel by Mumbai every day. So just imagine the potential of that business. And there is a huge, Mumbai is the commercial capital of the country. We are doing the same thing for a technical capital of India, Bangalore. We are trying to do many things, so there is a huge potential. We have a large number of projects now available to us, including urban station development. There are 7 billion passengers who travel by railway every year. Now just imagine 7 billion is close to the global population. Now that many footfalls, that many eyeballs, and therefore those urban stations where the redevelopment could take place on the top of the station using the land and air rights. Just imagine the potential for that project. So there are huge opportunities for investment into the railways. We are using all resources available within the country. We are already borrowing about $25 billion from the largest insurance company in India. But we will obviously are open for finding out how other countries, there are 13 countries with whom we have got agreements for development. We are already working on Japan. $16 billion project for the linking Mumbai and Ahmedabad, 2 urban centers with high-speed train. Yesterday, we launched another semi-high-speed train going from Delhi to Agra, which is the home to one of the world's best-known site, Taj Mahal.
Okay. Well, Mr. Prabhu, I wanted to ask you exactly how much of contracts you gave out in FY16 and how much you will give out in FY17. And I'm asking because if you looked at the budget numbers, there was an 80% jump in the amount of money that the railway spent, the expenditure budget. From 56,000 crores in FY15, you'll have risen to 97,000 crores in FY16. FY17, the budget is 1,21,000 crores, 25% rise. So how many contracts did you actually give out in FY16? How many do you expect to give out in FY17?
You know, you will be surprised and shocked that the government's or railways capital expenditure is more than double of previous 5 years average. Okay. It is more than double. There is more than 30-40% more than the previous year's capital expenditure. So you can imagine how much we are spending in the railway. But this is only from the capital expenditure of the railway, which I mentioned in the budget. In addition to this, we already spent about, there is a dedicated freight corridor. We gave away the contract this year, which will be at least about 30-40,000 crores. We are already working on the projects like port connectivity project, which is another high amount. And we gave contracts for $6 billion, $7 billion to GE and Alstom to manufacture diesel and electric locomotives this year. Then we are already, so if you go outside of the budget, without the number I gave you, which is double than the previous 5 years or more than double of the from this is in addition to what these numbers are. So if you add these numbers, they are phenomenal numbers which already happened. Next year will be far better because this year we have to start from scratch. There was no available projects. So we actually had to prepare detailed project report. We had to get sanction for this project. Now the sanctioned project available with the railways as a result of the good work that we had done last year are actually will be sufficient to even cater to the next 3-4 years of capital expenditure. And the funding is more or less tied for at least next 2-3 years. So therefore there is no real issue in terms of that. In addition to this, we are making joint ventures with the state government. There are state governments, 16 state governments will work with us. The contract that will be given through joint ventures will be far excess of what has ever happened. So you can imagine the amount of money that is going to be spent by the railways directly from the budget which I just mentioned. Next year we are talking about 1,20,000 crores, but this is only one part. The part that is going to be spent outside of that will be even far more.
Okay.
And just imagine, this was the year when we actually had no project. So the railways is to take more than 2 years from the project is announced till the tender is given.
Okay.
We brought down the gap to less than 6 months this year. So just imagine, it is not easy. Just, if you feel that spending is something so easy, you just take the money out and give it to people. It is not that simple as that. It's not giving away the arms. This has to be followed up, but despite this we have done it. So I'm very sure we'll do better next year.
So this is more of a request rather than a question. I fully appreciate that your ministry has been incredibly busy developing these projects. And we're really seeing the momentum building. When I talk to investors globally, they've become more cynical on India, particularly in terms of infrastructure spending. And it would be great to get you out speaking to global investors about what is going on in the railway sector in India, which I think is massively underappreciated.
Okay. Well, Mr. Minister, that's an invitation.
Sorry?
No, but Adrian Mowat, our guest, is inviting you to go out to international fora and speak about railway investment. I think he's saying it's a very underappreciated investment.
See, the railways are really changing in a significant way. But you try to understand the challenge of railways. First, there is no other enterprise as big as railways which the government runs. So we have to run the railway, transport 7 billion passengers, the highest commercial employer in the world with more than 1.3 million people, with the largest number of meals we cook, the largest number of freight we carry, everything else. So we run the business. We are the only other probably in the world, the railways create their own budget and present it to the parliament. So therefore I have to balance the books, I have to make sure that I maintain it. That's the second challenge. The third challenge, I have to capital expenditure of a magnitude that is necessary. Railway has never invested anything even close to what China did in the last 10 years, even fraction of that. So we are now trying to gear up, we are trying to put $142 billion into the railways in the next 4 years, 5 years. We are also trying to make sure at the same time modernize the railway system. That's why I'm saying we are doing more collaborations, we are trying to do it. I'm trying to internally reorganize the organization. So I delegated all my power. We are empowering the people at the ground level. It was the most centralized organization in the world. We are trying to decentralize it. We are going to make it efficient. And that too, in a same system that we are bound by the government rules and regulations. So we have just a very massive task of re-engineering. We are trying to get the best of talent to manage these different issues. So we are getting even people like Ratan Tata, who is advising us on business re-engineering. We have got the IT, the communication information technology. So someone like Mr. Chandrasekhar, who actually is one of the best brains available in the country as the CEO of TCS, he is working with us. So we are getting top class people to come and help us pro bono to make sure that we work on a basis that this is a national enterprise which can transform India. And so many reports coming from so many reputed institutions like Nomura, like Morgan Stanley and many others, they are saying that railway is turning around and railway is trying to develop, and railway can contribute, as per most of these research reports, 1 to 2% to GDP in the next few years' time. Just imagine, so normal GDP growth fueled by, accelerated by the railways. You can imagine railway will benefit because there will be more freight coming to us because of economy growing, but also will contribute to growth of economy because of our own activity.
In fact, on that point that you just made about more freight, can you give us what the freight revenue growth could be for the railways in the next, say, couple of years? Because currently 2/3 of revenues already comes from freight, and I understand that you have unveiled a new policy to ramp up freight volumes, which includes traffic rationalization, etc. What could the growth in freight revenues be over the next couple of years?
See, there is already, all this is related to the growth of economy and growth of core sector. So, railways can handle freight only when the freight is available in the marketplace. So therefore, this is directly related to the growth of core sector, the steel, the cement, the power sector and all others. So this is related to that. But what we are also targeting is, like global players, we want to make sure that 20 to 30% of the total revenues of railways must come from non-railway sources. If you just rely on freight and passengers only to sustain yourself, it will not be possible anywhere in the world. And therefore, changing our strategy of the railway, for the first time in railway's history, to bring in non-rail revenues as a major source of revenue for the railways, as taking it over a period of time to as high as 20, 25%, maybe 30%. But to make that, we need strategy. And strategy cannot be implemented in a quarter. It has to be implemented over a longer period. We need to reorganize the structure. We want to align our policies to what the market needs. So all of that I started last year. We continue this year. You'll see a huge results of this. In fact, this year again we'll see some result. But I will not be happy with incremental growth. I want a very big transformative growth which will happen over the 3 to 5 year time frame. But I'm sure in that time frame, you will see the railways will not just be dependent on freight. On freight, we have been dependent on only few commodities. So already started working on that. We'll diversify our freight basket. We'll also, first time in railway probably for so many decades, we are not increased the freight rate, but we are in fact talking about rationalizing it. So just imagine the new thing. I am appointing a customer service manager for each of the important customers for the railways. We are making sure that all our policies are developed on the basis of dialogue, which we started on the next day of the budget. So cement industry, steel industry, aluminum industry, coal industry, they all keep coming to us, talking to us. We understand their concern. We are also getting private sector to come into the wagon business and others. So we are trying to work on such a way that freight, which is the mainstay of railways income today, is sustained. At the same time, we make sure that we also start getting revenue for non-railway operation, which is the only long-term sustainable solution for the railways to be commercially viable. We are also trying to increase the passenger fare, so we have already launched yesterday Gatiman. Soon we launch another 4 important products. One which will run even at a rate, at a speed higher than Gatiman, that will come as Tejas. We'll also start trains which is Humsafar, which again is a premium product. We'll start a product called Uday, which is the overnight train, double-decker train, which again will be a semi-premium product. And then we launch a product only for the poor and the common people, fully unreserved train, which will be called Antodey. So all the new products will also get a new business.
Okay.
So idea is
Mr.
that
Minister,
we want to make money from those sources who can afford to pay.
Mr. Minister, we are both from Maharashtra. So I want to ask you a very, very specific question. When the Dabhol power project was restructured, you said you are buying power from them at 4 rupees 70 paise, which is much cheaper than the 8 rupees 50 paise which others charge you. Isn't that criminal? I mean, are you into cost reduction, or is 8 rupees 50 paise going to be the power cost for railways?
So are you happy that we reduce the cost of the energy?
Oh, very happy. I'm asking you if you're going to do more of that.
So that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, so this is something you can imagine for years together. We are doing such a big blunder of paying, railways are paying through the nose for a price of electricity which should have been very low. When I was the Minister of Energy, Electricity, Power, I was the one who brought in this new law, which I knew has a provision for open access, which was never used by the railways or for anybody else. We started using it. I used the most transparent method. I invited bids from the people. The cost of electricity with the saving will be 3,500 rupees.
Exactly.
Just imagine how much I have saved.
Yes, Mr.
But
Minister.
this year I have saved about 8 to 9,000 crores of expenditure. So despite the fact that there was a very drop in the freight which was completely beyond my control, still I could manage only by neutralizing it, most of it, by way of reducing cost. So this has never been attempted. So my idea is that we should, and in fact this year, again my strategy is almost zero budgeting. We'll go through every cost center, find out why that cost should be incurred. Otherwise what happens is the budgeting means that take historical cost, add 10-15% to it and budget for it. I don't like that budgeting. I want to ensure that each and every expenditure point, I need to re-examine it to find out why that expenditure to be incurred to begin with. So I started that process. I am completely changing the accounting system, not just to make from single to double entry or from cash to accrual, which was always advocated by the earlier experts that this could bring in the railway the benefit, which I agree. But I am not happy with only just incremental changes.